Open any standard history textbook, and the narrative focuses almost entirely on kings, generals, and male politicians. Historically, the exercise of power is framed as an exclusively male pursuit. Look into the primary records of these eras, and women are often restricted to the background. In classical accounts, they appear as domestic figures or secondary characters rather than primary actors. Yet the historical evidence tells a different story. At every major crisis point in India's development, it was the leadership of women that provided the necessary momentum to overcome entrenched social and political barriers. We divide these achievements into three arenas: the military battlefield, social reform, and the modern frontier of science and politics. These areas aren't isolated. Early political and social shifts connect directly to the professional opportunities available today. To understand how the Indian state was actually built, we have to look past the portraits of monarchs and examine the specific women who directed its course. We begin with the first battleground, the era of empires, where regional control was determined by military strategy and defensive fortifications. This engraving of the 1857 First War of Independence depicts the scale of the conflict against British colonial forces. Rani Lakshmibai stood at the center of this resistance. She took direct command of her army to defend the state of Jhansi. By refusing to surrender and leading her troops personally on the battlefield, she established a tactical model for the anti-colonial movements that followed. Long before the 19th century, women were already navigating the highest levels of political power. In 1236, Razia Sultan became the only female ruler to ever lead the Delhi Sultanate. She maintained her position by actively outmaneuvering conservative court officials. She proved her legitimacy through administrative reforms and by leading her military forces in person during regional campaigns. Later, Ahilya Bai Holkar of the Malwa region transitioned this power into nation-building. She directed her resources toward a fair legal system and the construction of infrastructure, including temples and roads, that improved trade across her territory. These figures demonstrated that women could exercise full sovereign authority, successfully managing the logistical and strategic demands of the state. As the political landscape evolved, the nature of conflict shifted. The focus moved from physical territory to the systemic social structures and internal prejudices that restricted individual rights. Despite this, she focused on providing a curriculum that addressed both female education and caste discrimination. By the 20th century, the fight for human dignity gained international visibility. Looking at the face of Mother Teresa, we see the results of a life spent in the service of the marginalized. She established the Missionaries of Charity to provide medical care and shelter for those the existing social systems had completely abandoned. These reformers created the moral and educational infrastructure necessary for a modern society, securing rights that were just as vital as any physical border. In the modern era, these historical foundations allowed women to enter fields that were previously closed, from global diplomacy to space exploration. Indira Gandhi, India's first female prime minister, demonstrated this shift in leadership. She directed the nation's geopolitical strategy and led the country through the critical 1971 war. In law enforcement, Kiran Bedi became the first female officer in the Indian Police Service, or IPS. This federal agency manages internal security and prison reform across the country. This upward trajectory eventually reached orbit. Kalpana Chawla, working with NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, became the first Indian-born woman in space. Her mission in 1997 proved that the barriers to entry in science and engineering had been permanently moved, creating a new standard for Indian students in STEM. STEM refers to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. This progress is also visible in international athletics, where figures like boxer Mary Kom and badminton player P.V. Sindhu, seen here with her Olympic medal, consistently represent the country in global competition. These individuals represent a broader move towards women directing India's contribution to international politics, science, and sport. The history we have covered spans from the defensive cannons of the 19th century to the research labs of the 21st. Each achievement cleared a path for the next. A reform in 1848 or a political victory in 1971 created the specific professional avenues that thousands of women are currently pursuing today. These historical figures provide the practical framework for modern leadership and education. Their recorded work ensures that the current generation does not have to restart these battles. Instead, they can focus on new objectives, building directly on top of the victories already won.